Now, friends, coming to the today's subject, that is e-assessment. Now, you call it e-assessment, or you call it faceless assessment, you call it nameless assessment, assessment, or jurisdictional-less assessment, say, or even the paperless assessment. And lastly, friends, hopefully, corruption-less assessment. This is what we expect, though there are other objectives as well. Now, friends, I would try to cover the introduction of the subject, the recent background, that is before coming to the today's subject, what has happened so far. That is the e-proceeding paperless environment. Some of that part, respected chairman has also covered. Thereafter, we'll discuss the nitty-gritties and this scheme, e-assessment scheme, how it will work, who's who, what is what. And then thereafter, something about faceless appeal and faceless penalty, now introduced by the Finance Act 2020. What are the benefits, the conclusion, the issues arising from the scheme, which will come from the deliberation, and respected chairman is also there to give his valuable opinion and suggestions. And last, some tips which I think that in this regime of faceless assessment, what professional brothers should take into account, should take care. Now, friends, we are all well aware, as Vada Sahab has also touched upon this point, as regards the introduction of the scheme, that the Honorable Prime Minister has introduced the concept of Digital India. And through Digital India, what he meant was to ensure consistency, transparency, and increase efficiency. And therefore, as Vada Sahab also touched upon that point, that in an officer's conclave, he wanted a paperless assessment scheme so as to ensure the transparency, the efficiency, and the accountability. So, friends, continuing with that idea, the central government in last few years has been making serious efforts to use and apply the information and technology to the income tax assessment matters with a view to achieve these targets. Friends, in the e-assessment scheme, there has been a complete paradigm shift from the traditional assessment what we have been seeing, or we have been participating so far. As a matter of pilot project, initially 5 cities were selected, more than 58,000 cases were selected. And initially Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, and Mumbai were selected where this e-assessment scheme was implemented, and 2 more were added later on, that is Hyderabad and Kolkata. Friends, it is going to be the new face of the income tax department, because I believe that the selection of the number of cases for e-assessment then is going to be increased. As Vadas also touched upon the point that in many countries it is stated to have been successful, that the countries like Singapore, UK, Brazil, Korea, Japan, Germany, etc. Just one, please. Now we'll come to the e-assessment proceedings, that is a paperless environment. Now, it is not that first time we are hearing some of the technical terms. The department tried to prepare a foundation for the assessees and the professionals to understand some of the technical terms and to be familiar with the paperless environment. So, the department came out, rolled out the e-assessment proceeding scheme, and a new rule under Section 127 was inserted by the Income Tax 18th Amendment Rule 2015 with effect from 2nd of December 2015. It provided the framework for the issue of the notices and other communications. And these rules also provided and prescribed the actual address, physical address of the assessee, as also the addresses like electronic and electronic email addresses on which the notices or other communication can be delivered. As we are all aware that in the past, service of the notice and issuance of the notice, that has been a great, it's a big area of controversies and litigation between the assessee and the department under different provisions, 147 or say 142, between the assessee and the department. So that has certainly, that will, I believe, eliminate or reduce that type of litigation. Friends, thereafter, the CBDT starting from 2000 onward, 16 and onward to 18, then kept on amending the rules, then notified various procedures, the required guidelines, etc. Concept of hearing was also introduced by the insertion of subsection 2, subsection 23, capital C in the definition clause of section 2 by the Finance Act 2016, with effect from 1st of April 2016, which provided that the term hearing includes communication of data and documents through electronic mode. So consequently, the CBDT also issued a revised format of 142 notice. I have given some of the details for the development. Of course, Vadavas have also touched upon that. In the year 2017, the department came out with this integrated platform, that is Income Tax Business Application ITBA, for the electronic conduct of the various functions proceedings, which included assessment also. Now, this scope of e-assessment proceedings kept on extended by different instruction 8 by 17 and 1 by 18 and so on, as Vadavas has already touched those. The assessment for assessment year 17-18, they stood completed by adopting this e-assessment proceedings. So far as 18-19 is concerned, assessment of AY 18-19 are concerned, this I believe is a transitional period. So part of the assessments were completed or are being completed by e-assessment proceeding, and the rest selected cases e-assessment. Friends, before I take you to the e-assessment, I thought that because there appears some confusion prevailing, the persons used to, they interchangeably use the words e-proceeding versus e-assessment. So I thought that differentiation, I make it clear, and I hope on my screen is there, it is visible by way of a chart. Firstly, it is who is the EO. So that is the crux of the area. In fact, in the e-proceeding, you are well aware that, yes, this is my assessing officer. You are aware his name and face. But now, as I said, it is a complete faceless, nameless, jurisdictionless in the e-assessment. Applicability of e-proceeding was confined to 143 as also 147 assessment. But the faceless assessment is confined to 143. We'll further discuss this later. Assessment here I have already told. Assessing author will be your territorial jurisdiction assessing officer in the e-assessment proceeding. In the e-assessment, it will be NEAC, National E-Assessment Center. Now, notice under 143, of course, will be was being issued by the judicial assessing officer in e-assessment proceeding, and now by the NEAC sitting at New Delhi. Assignment of the case, territorial jurisdiction assessing officer in proceeding, and now here the NEAC will be assigning. We'll discuss in further details. Inquiries earlier, in the e-proceedings, it is the judicial EO himself who used to conduct the inquiry, issuing commission or making direct inquiry through inspector on his own, whatever. Now NEAC will be there and we'll be discussing. There are different units, the help of which it will be done. Then at both the level, it will be through the electronic mode. And in the e-assessment, it will be completely, as I said, faceless, nameless, etc. In the e-proceeding, of course, there was a possibility. Assessing officer used to call the assessee over phone and ask him to put the replies, etc., through this electronic mode, but it was practically a sort of face-to-face assessment. Friends, this scheme was based mainly on the recommendation of the Tax Administration Reform Commission. A relevant portion I have extracted here, though I am not, reading it. It is for the completeness I have included in my presentation. Firstly, it was late Mr. Arun Jaitley, the finance minister, who in the union budget speech for 2018-19 spoke about e-assessment scheme, and I've extracted the relevant para from his budget speech. And I may just quickly read out for you what he said at the time. And he said that we had introduced e-assessment scheme in 2016 on a pilot basis, and in 2017 extended to 102 cities with the objective of reducing the interface between the department and the taxpayers. The experience gained so far, we are now ready to roll out the assessment across the country, which will transform the age-old procedure of the income tax department and the manner in which they interact with the taxpayer and other stakeholders. Accordingly, I propose to amend the Act to notify a new scheme for the assessment, where the assessment will be done in the electronic mode, which will almost eliminate person-to-person contact, leading to greater efficiency in transfer. So earlier, in the earlier part, he spoke, he referred to the e-proceeding, and now he speaks of the e-system. Then, friend, consequent to this, by the Finance Act 2018, two new subsections, that is subsection 3A and 3B, were introduced. By way of section 3, capital A, the central government was empowered to come out with some scheme through a notification in the official gazette for providing for making assessment of the income or loss. And the purpose should have been to eliminate the interface between the AO and the assessee. Secondly, optimizing utilization of the resources to economy scale and function specialties, and introducing a team-based assessment with dynamic jurisdiction. That is, more than one brain will be working now as against the one assessing officer. 3B was also there, and through this, central government was bestowed on the power that for the purposes of giving effect to the scheme, which is provided in subsection 3A, the central government was empowered to direct that any of the provisions, whether they shall apply or not, or if they apply, then with some exceptions, modifications, and adoptions, they can make. Originally, this was to notifications were to be issued by 31st March 2020, but I believe by the Finance Act 2020, it has further been extended to 31st March 2022. So by now, these two notifications, that is next, that is 61 and 62 has been notified, all both dated 12th of September 2019. Now I'll also come to the present Finance Minister, Madam Nirmala Sita Raman. And I've extracted the relevant portion from the budget speech, and I would like that I should go through this so as to have a hint as to what exactly has been the legislative intention and what the government wants. Friends, it reads that the existing system of scrutiny assessment in the income tax department involves a high level of personal interaction between the taxpayer and the department, which lead to certain undesirable practice on the part of the tax officials. To eliminate such instances and to give shape to the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, a scheme of the faceless assessment in electronic mode involving no human interface is being launched this year in a phased manner. And to start with, e-assessment shall be carried out in the cases requiring verification of certain specified transactions or discrepancies. So it will be in the phased manner. He further says that cases selected for scrutiny shall be allocated to the assessment unit in a random manner. Notices shall be issued electronically by a central sale without disclosing the name, designation, or location of the AO. The central sale shall be single point of contact between the taxpayer and the department. This new scheme of the assessment will represent a paradigm shift in the functioning of the income tax department. Now, friends, we come to the e-assessment scheme. As I said, that two notifications are already there. They contain complete details of the scheme and also the what modification the government has made in the different provisions of the law. And it is a complete code by itself. I can say this, containing 24 definitions and 12 clauses. scheme is not applicable to Veltex. The scope of the scheme, clause 3, speak of the scope of the notification. It will be in respect of such territorial areas or person or class of persons or income or class of incomes or class or classes of case or cases of class of cases as may prescribe. So there will be a selection process. Prime objective of the scheme, Vadasab has also touched it, to reduce the interface, then ensuring transparency, team-based assessment, dynamic jurisdiction. As I said, more than one brain will be working now. Increase the efficiency of the tax administration. Ensure that the assessments are technically sound. We'll discuss later on when we'll discuss the role of the units. Taking a consistent view on various issues to avoid prolonged and unwanted litigation. As we can see that there are divergent view being taken by the assessing officers sitting in the different part of the countries. So now there will be a consistent view on a particular policy issue throughout the country. So that will help reducing the litigation. Now, what is e-assessment? Friends, before this, let me share you something very interesting. What I find is that those who have been dealing with the Income Tax Act, whether by way of whether as a practitioner or as an assessee, they must have found that the 4 T's are very important. And what those 4 T's are, let me just discuss. The first is the fact, and the second is the act. We all know that we have to marshal the facts first, and then to see the act or the judicial guidance. As there is a saying that facts come first, law comes later. We cannot just jump to apply the various decisions, Supreme Court, High Court decision, and the provision of the law. You also cannot blindly apply the provision of the law, that is the act, unless the facts are very clear. So fact and act, these are the 2 T across every day. Third is the tact. Tact is that represents the strategical move. As to what type of stand you have to take before the assessing officer, whether you have to wait to see the reaction over the first stand taken, or then and what decision you have to cite while arguing a case in a court, whether you have to cite a decision to see, wait and see the reaction of the opposite counsel, and then to provide your own decision to make him answer yes. So it goes like on. The third T with which we are concerned is the pact. Friends, though I don't want that this should be discussed, but it is need of the hour. And it is the pact which has made the government to think. Sometimes it is the assessing officer who initiated, or sometimes it is the assessor counsel. Then they discuss the matter face to face, and they become comfortable, and for obvious reasons. Now, in fact, precisely it is the last T which is required to be taken care, and this e-assessment scheme to a large extent is to deal with this T. And I believe that they want to convert this T to another T, that is the transparency. Of course, there are some other objective of the scheme which we have already discussed. Now, friends, some words have been used. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced data analytics, complex algorithm-based automated allocation system, automated examination tools, hash functions, video, telephony, etc. So these are not, in fact, some words taken from science fiction, but these are the words which we will be coming across while discussing the concept of e-assessment scheme. Some of them, as I said, we have become used to because of the introduction of the technology in the past few years through e-assessment. Now, friends, I've given the definition of e-assessment in clause 2 13 it is there that it is the assessment proceedings conducted electronically in e-proceeding facility through assessments registered account. So it is only the registered account, no other account, in the designated portal of the department. That is the Income Tax India filing.gov.in. In my suggestion, we'll discuss later on. I think that this name should now is changed, like Income Tax India Gov.in only, because filing shows a confined meaning to this. Now, what is e-assessment and what is covered and what is not covered? As per the definition clause, presently it covers only 143.3 assessment. Assessment not covered are initially the best judgment assessment under section 144 of the Act. And we popularly also term it as the bad judgment assessment. Use and heavy assessment additions are made as a matter of practice by the department. But now the Finance Act 2020 has enhanced the scope and also covered such best judgment assessment also under section 144 for and from EY 2021. Now, assessment of the escaped income under section 147 is not covered. The search assessments under section 153 capital A, where the search has taken place in the case of the assessee, or assessment under section 153 capital C, where the third party, those assessments are also not covered. I hope I am fully and comfortably audible, sir. Am I comfortably audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine, thank you. Now, what is not next covered is the set-aside assessment. Because these are not the areas presently covered in the e-assessment scheme. Now, friends, let us understand what is the structure of the e-assessment centers. After all, who will do it? And what are the authorities? So, firstly, it is the National E-Assessment Center, NEAC. In short, we may call it NEAC, whatever. And presently, it is headed. It is situated at New Delhi, headed by Principal CCIT. Now, under NEAC, there will be 8 regional e-assessment centers. They will call them REAC, REC. They will be headed by the different chief commissioners. And presently, they are situated at Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Pune, Bengaluru, and Hyderabad. Under each RAC, there are again 4 units. First is the assessment unit. Other is the verification unit. The third one is a technical unit. And lastly, it is the review unit. Now, what is the role of these different type of agencies or units? So that I also, that is there on my screen. Now, NEC will be at the top. It will facilitate the conduct of the assessment proceedings in a very centralized manner. And it will be vested with the assessment proceedings. It is the nodal agency. Final order and final word will come from NEC only. REAC will there to facilitate, of course, the conduct of the assessment proceedings, but in a cadre controlling region by the principal commissioners. Now, third is the assessment unit with which we shall be we shall concern with it, not directly through the NEAC. We will discuss the flowchart, how the things will move on. So it has to perform the function of making the assessment. It will raise the query, it will collect the information and process it and send it to the NEAC every time. And then the verification unit. Sometimes the assessing officer will need some verification, cross verification, examination of the accounts. Say cash creditor confirmation is there and the assessment unit want the cross verification. Then assessment unit will make request to the NEAC and then NEAC will select the verification unit who will do this. Recording of the statement, recording of the witnesses, examination of the accounts are all the functions to be discharged by the verification. Now, technical units, they will render the assistance or advice on various issues to the assessment unit, which may be in the areas of legal, accounting, forensic, information technology, valuation, transfer pricing, data analytics. So, friends, we have to gear up ourselves. Now, as against one brain, there are so many brains involved, and this particular technical unit will be, I believe, involving the expert of the subject say some circular or decision cited by the assessee, the technical experts are there to counter that. If you render you make your submission explaining the fall on the GP rate, or you want to explain away this increase in the decrease in the yield ratio and increase in the what we'll say is so those technical or valuation, these aspects will be dealt with by the technical aspect. So we have to be very careful while answering and giving our explanation. We will discuss later on also. One more unit is the review unit. So, broadly, it is a sort of the revisionary power appears to have been conferred, as is the case presently under Section 263. But here it will be here it is after the completion of the assessment order, subjected order, then the commission comes into a picture. And then if he finds such the subjected order to be erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of the revenue, then he does so. But here it appears to be a continuous process. And NESE, if things fit that some draft order sent to it by the assessment unit, then it send it to the review unit to inviting its own comments, suggestions on the. Now, what is the procedure of the e-assessment? So now I'm discussing what will be the flow. Firstly, it is the NESE, the nodal agency, that shall serve that will select the cases for e-assessment, and then shall serve notice under Section 143(2), mentioning the issues, specific issues, in respect of which the case was selected for assessment under Section 143(2). Then the taxpayer is supposed to reply within a period of 15 days. It will come to the NESE. The assessee would not know as to who is the assessing officer, faceless, nameless, jurisdictional-less. Only a notice for NESE will come 143(2). If you had an occasion to see those notices in the metro cities, those professional brothers are there, then at the bottom you will not find the name of the officer. It is simply what is mentioned is NESE. Then the NESE shall assign the case to a specific assessment unit in any of the 8 regional REAC, that is Regional Assessment Center, through the Automated Allocation Center, which we, in the short form, we may call it AS. Friends, for your convenience, I have also mentioned the relevant clause number here of the scheme. Now, once the case is selected, answer is reply is there from the assessee. The NESE will transfer it to the that assessment unit, and the assessment unit, when it gets a reference of a matter from the NESE, there may be 3 situations. Firstly, the assessment unit may make a request to the NESE that it needs further clarification, informations, documents, and evidences on certain issues. The assessment unit may require the assessee to substantiate its contention. Sometimes the assessing unit may feel the necessity of conducting inquiry, as I said, that if it is a case of a cash creditor and the assessing officer want a cross verification of the creditor, or sometime when a case of say cement industry, say textile industry, edible industry, different industries are there, and technical issues of yield and other type of power consumption may be there, then he'll request the NESE. And then thirdly is sometime he may need some technical assistance, say legal and accounting, all those. Now on that aspect, once a request is made by the assessment unit, then the NESE will send it to the assessee. Assessee will in turn will reply back. On the other hand, the verification unit, once assigned its task, then they will provide its report again to the NESE. That similarly technical unit will also provide its detail or report to the NEAC. So everything will be through NEAC. So NEAC say is working like a post department. All the concern will approach to the NEAC, and NEAC will in turn communicate to the other side, and there is no direct linking or communication between the two. Though technically, to speed up, there may be some electronic procedure that when the unit or the assessee initiates and address it to the NEAC, it might simultaneously reach to the concerned unit through the automated allocation system and like this. Now, when all the responses received from the assessee and different units are passed on by the NEAC to the assessment unit, the job of the assessment units commences. The assessment unit is supposed to prepare a draft assessment order, and of course, after taking into account all the relevant material which is made available to it. Now, there may be two options to the assessment unit. Either it may accept the return income as filed by the assessee, or it may make some modification. If it modifies the return income, changes, make some changes, higher or say addition like this, then along with the detail of the penalty proceeding, it will convey it to the NEAC. After this, the assessment unit shall prepare a draft assessment order. This is the first stage, and will send it to the NEAC. Now, on the receipt of the draft assessment order, the NEAC shall examine, and based on the risk management strategy and automated examination tool, it will finalize the assessment order. It will serve a copy of such order to the taxpayer directly, and also notice for initiation of the penalty proceedings, along with the details of the demand, specifying the sum payable or receivable, whatever. The second option may be that NEAC serve a copy. Then this third is may issue a show cause notice to the assessee. Instead of finalizing the assessment at the first stage, it may think proper that the assessee should be given a chance. Then a show cause notice will be issued by the NEAC to the assessee. Assessee in turn is supposed to file a reply to the NEAC. The replies were received, of course, will be sent to the assessment unit, and the assessment unit will send in turn its draft assessment order again to the NEAC, and again the earlier two steps will be repeated. Now, there may be a third situation when the NEAC, on the receipt of the draft assessment order, instead of finalizing the assessment, or instead of sending it to the assessee directly, seeking his explanation, the third option may be with the NEAC that it may send it to the review unit, and the review unit may be asked to review the draft assessment order. That will be done based on the automated allocation center. The review unit may be any of the 8 REACs. Now, what the review unit will do? The review unit has got two options. Either it may concur with the draft order, or if not, then it may suggest some suitable modification. Now, what the NEAC will do? NEAC, in case there are some suggestions there from the review unit, it will send it to the assessment unit first. And assessment unit then will again think over the suggestions made by the review unit. And after doing this, the assessment unit will prepare a final draft assessment order. First, it was a draft assessment order. Now it is a final draft assessment order. Now, this final draft assessment order will be sent by the assessment unit to the NAC. Now, again, NAC, when it received this final draft assessment order, wherein the suggestion made by the review unit are considered by the assessment unit, has got two options. The NAC firstly may either finalize the order and serve it a copy to the assessing officer following the earlier steps, that raising the demand and all those. Sometimes the NAC may also feel that still the assessee should be given an opportunity, because during the proceeding, when the draft order was sent to the review, and when a review made its suggestion and suggestions were forwarded to the assessment unit, the assessee was not made a party to this entire episode. So now NAC may think it fit that such final draft assessment order be sent to the assessee and asking him to show cause as to why this final draft assessment order be not accepted. Now, again, the assessee, of course, will reply. The reply to the NAC. NAC will send it in turn to the assessment unit. Assessment unit, in turn, then will again pass an intimated response to the NAC. Now, at this stage, the order which will be drafted by the assessment unit has been named as revised draft assessment order. So first it was a draft assessment order. Second, it was the final draft assessment order. Third stage is the revised draft assessment order. Now again, when it reaches to the NAC and it finds that there is no modification suggested which is prejudicial to the interest of the assessee, then NAC will finalize the order, survey a copy as per the past practice, showing the demand, etc. Alternatively, it may issue a show cause notice. When it finds that some modifications are there which are found to be prejudicial to the interest of the revenue, then of course assessee will be given an opportunity, and the assessee will provide its answer. Now, in case there is no answer given by the assessee, then at this stage the NAC may finalize. But in case the assessee responds and provides its explanation, again the whole process which we have discussed so far, the NAC will get it. NAC will transfer to assessment unit, and then assessment unit in turn will again send it to the NAC. So ultimately, this will culminate into the final completion of the assessment proceedings, and it will result into an assessment order which will be passed by the NAC. When this is done, the NAC will transfer. It will transfer the entire electronic record to the jurisdiction assessing officer, and now the role of the jurisdiction assessing officer begin. Then this transfer is meant for imposition of the penalty if so required, collection or recovery of the demand, rectification of the mistakes, and giving effect to the appellate orders. These are the post-assessment proceeding, and sometimes submissions of the remand report, other reports to or before the appellate authorities, administrative authorities, and like this. And he may also seek sanction for prosecution if so, if there is a need to do that. Now, one important aspect is that NAC, if it feels necessary that at any stage of assessment proceedings, it is of the view that it should transfer the case to the assessing officer, then it may transfer to the judicial assessing officer. It is a matter to be considered, because I could not lay my hands if any of the guidelines provided as to what may be the criteria or basis on which the NAC may sometime feel it necessary to transfer the case from the e-assessment regime to the traditional regime to the judicial assessing officer, because it also may raise some question. There may be abuse of the power, so that aspect has to be taken care. Now, the scheme also speak of initiation of some penalty proceedings, and it is provided in the scheme that if any unit during the course of this entire proceedings it come across as that there has been some non-compliance of any notice, direction, or order issued under the scheme, then if it is there on the part of the assessee, then they may recommend the NAC that that sub proceeding should be initiated under a proper appropriate provisions of the Act contained under Chapter 21 of the Act. And then the NESC in turn will, of course, give a show cause to the assessee, and after getting the reply, it will be sent to the concerned unit. Unit will prepare a draft penalty order. It may draw or it may drop it if felt satisfied. And thereafter, these communications, if the draft order is there, then it will be sent to the NESC. And then NESC will levy the penalty if it is found suitable. So, friend, so far what we discussed was on the flow chart, how the things will move on, what is the role of the different units. And we found that it was a complete faceless, nameless, jurisdictionless, contactless between the assessment unit on the one part, all the units on the one part, and the assessee on the other part, and even the different units in between, they are not able to contact each other. Now, features of the e-assessment are that it is a electronic exchange of information, and all the communications, whether it is between the internal communication between the various centers, units, and between the NESC and like this, it shall be carried out only through electronic mode. The electronic mode includes the emails, upload of documents on e-filing portal of the department, mobile app also not included on real-time basis, and message to the taxpayers. And as the scheme is, the basic idea is that there will be complete absence of the presence of the assessee or its AR, though in some of the cases on the demand, a video conferencing may be permitted by the NESC. But that has to be strictly in accordance with the procedure laid down by the board. Now, I'm not aware, in fact, whether any procedure has been laid down by the board so far as this video conferencing aspect is concerned, or it is yet to be let down. But certainly it requires an elaboration on the part of the CBDT and the government to come out with a scheme with clarity. So confusion on that aspect, the possible confusion issues arising may be addressed. And this is also very important, that is the authentication of the electronic record. Clause 9 speaks, or the scheme speaks of this. And where originator of the communication is the NESC RESC. So this authentication process will be by affixing the digital signature as per Section 3, subsection 2 of the Information Technology Act. But if it is being originated by the assessee or any other person, then it may be by the digital signature, by way of electronic signature, or electronic authentication techniques, as per Section 3, capital A, subsection 2 of the Electronic Mode, Information Technology Act. Another aspect is the delivery electronic record. We have heard so far in the traditional assessment proceeding, the issuance of the notice, the service of the notice, and we all know, we have come across a lot of litigation going on the issuance and the service of the notice, and they assume significance. Service assumes significance in the context of 143(2) and say Section 149, limitation of reassessment notices to be issued by the AO, and issuance and the service of the notice in the context of 142 and so on. Now they use the word delivery of the electronic record. Clause 2.1 is relevant. It does not define precisely what delivery means, but clause 2 refers to the definition as provided under the Income Tax Act. Clause 10 of the scheme provides that every notice, order, or any other electronic communication under the scheme shall be delivered to the assessee, to the addressee, by way of placing an authenticated copy thereof in the assessee's registered account, or secondly, by way of sending an authenticated copy thereof to the registered email address or the assessee or authorized representative. So we'll discuss later also that the registered email address assessee is required to be very vigilant now, and it must ensure that only one email address is registered with the department, and at all available places on this site, it should ensure that same email address is there and there is no contradiction thereof. Otherwise, sometime, and we have seen happening this in the past, that the mail sent by the department was not received by the assessee. So there may be sometime these type of situation may arise, and assessee may have to face difficulty. But then a welcoming step to take care of such a situation is also that now the scope of service and this delivery has been expanded even to the sending of messages on WhatsApp. Now this WhatsApp we all know has emerged a very effective tool of social media and communications, and we all see the faces, and we discuss and get the message on this WhatsApp media. Vijay used to send all information and PPTs and links through WhatsApp. So that will take care if you fail to receive any message or mail from the department on your registered email ID. Then they also suppose the department to upload an authenticated copy on the mobile app, followed by a real-time alert. Just for a recapitulation, I refer to section 282 of the Income Tax Right with Rule 127, which were amended sometime back to take care of transmission of the notices electronically. And the explanation below section 282 subsection 2 also provided the expression what it means, that electronic mails and electronic mail messages are the meaning or assigned, which are based on section 66 capital of the Information Technology Act. And friends, in fact, several terms and definitions of the this Information Technology Act have been used in the scheme. So now it is need of the hour. We should also equip ourselves. We should understand what are those definitions contained under the Electronic Information and Technology Act. Now, after this entire exercise, as we have already seen the power of Judicial Assessing Officer, I have already discussed that what he will be doing, the Judicial Assessing Officer, when he is communicated with the final assessment order, he get it from the NEC. Now, continuing with this e-assessment, or say faceless assessment, and perhaps feeling encouraged, though I'm not very much aware what has been the success ratio so far, Jaipur not being covered. Better you people sitting at metros on those cities where it has happened. This e-assessment scheme has been implemented. Though I have come, then when I discussed the matter with some of my colleagues sitting in these metros, then I was told that they are still lacking the adequate, strong infrastructure to successfully implement this scheme. And also there is some confusion with regard to selection on the limited scrutiny basis, or it will be a complete scrutiny. That is also issue I have raised in my PPT. Because the language of the provision speaks of the limited scrutiny, because the NESC is required to specify only those issues based on which the case of that taxpayer was selected, and not beyond that. But in the past, there appears no mechanism as to how this limited scrutiny aspect will be converted into full aspect, or whether at all this full assessment procedure has been contemplated at all in the faceless assessment scheme, for obvious reasons that it is going to be a very time-consuming, cumbersome procedure sometime, because there may be many rounds of exchange of communication between the assessee on one hand and the different units, that is all the 4 units and the NESC and then assessee. Assessee, while filing explanation, is supposed to support his explanation with all the corroborative evidences, and it is required to say attach the scanned copies, and there are then some limitations, I understand, put that in the e-assessment proceedings we have witnessed that there can't be more than 10 attachment, and the size of each one of them cannot extend 10 MB and so on. But when there is a lack of complete faceless, there will be lack of face-to-face interaction. Then, as respected Chairman Badal Sahab has also hinted, then we have to be very careful while drafting the answers. And I have also touched some of the aspect under the head tips. So now they have in the Finance Act 2020 also now provided that on the similar line, faceless appeal should also be there. And Foreign Firm Assessment Act 2021, some new subsections, that is Section 6 capital B, C, and 6 capital D have been inserted in Section 250, again with the same objectives of eliminating, that is the face-to-face hearing between the assessee and the CIT appeal, to the extent it is feasible technologically, and with the, under a this will work under a dynamic jurisdiction. Now, so far as appellate matters are concerned, ITAT has already started the video hearing through the video conferencing. And in Rajasthan, in Jaipur, this infrastructure has already been set up in Jaipur and Jodhpur benches. But here, there could happen only one hearing. That is, till now, it is the first and last. When there was a case fixed up third member matter, which was the Honorable Pramod Kumar sitting at Ahmedabad was the third member, and the assessing department, both the parties made their appearance at Jaipur bench through this video conferencing setup. And luckily, I was the person to argue out that case. So that is something about video conferencing. Here, as we have said that it is complete faceless, nameless, jurisdictional less. So the assessee would not be able to see the face of the learned CIT appeal before whom he is going to make, say, appearance. So we have to yet to see what details yet to come, how it will be and when it will be made applicable. And CBT is required to provide the necessary directions, notifications by 31st March 2022 in this respect. Similarly, the case of faceless penalty, they also want now to extend it to the penalty proceedings. And for that also amendments have been made by the Finance Act 2020. Now, friends, I have raised some issues, which you can see issues and which also include some suggestion. And respected Chairman Wadal Sahab is there also. In fact, the first and foremost issue, though it is not mentioned at serial number 1, which came to my mind is as to to what extent it will be practicable to do, and whether the assessment units all concerned, whether they would be able to do it within the given time frame or not. So far as the selection of the cases is there, raising the issues in the notices to be issued under Section 143(2) is concerned. That is already based on the artificial intelligence, and we have seen in the past that the queries and questions, the cases are selected on CAS, and based on that, these queries are also raised. And the CPC Bangalore, we have seen that while processing the return of income filed, they sometimes make a variation, higher variation as compared to the declared income, but they also provide the reasons thereof. So that is, I believe, is being done automatically. So that may perhaps not take much time, but when it comes say involving the human element, because after all, at the different units, be it the assessment unit, technical unit, review, or say this verification, all, including NEC, it will be man-handled, and manpower is there. Somebody has to carry out the verification. That verification itself may a lot of time. Sometimes the assessee may be demanding time for say justified reasons. Sometimes the assessee may find it difficult if it is a say case of large volume in a metro city and so many issues are involved, and the assessee has to reply each and a query in a detailed manner to safeguard its interest, and the assessee want all the supporting corroborative evidences Then the scanning of the document, attachment in the reply, and that may create a problem. Sometimes there may be practical difficulties because the paper is scanned, the paper is scanned and sent to the NESE may not be sometimes legible, and they or the units may not find it legible. It is like this. So there may be so exchange of say the communications, say demanding the details, then furnishing of the details, submissions, expansion, again then demanding of the same document or some more. So it is the answer lie in the womb of the time. We have to, of course, wait and watch. But then, needless to say that if the government want the scheme, the object is, of course, laudable. We are not here to criticize. But then the government has to ensure a very strong and adequate, efficient infrastructure as well on technical side, properly manned, to tackle the situation and the challenges they are going to face in the future. So far, they have only selected 58,000 cases, but in future, I believe, say for example, 2 lakh cases, I have got my own doubt how they will be doing it. But then I'm not, but I'm, I'm not negative. I'm optimist, and I believe after lapse of some time, of course, every introduction of everything new will it take its own time, and we'll get used to by this. In the Mufassal small areas, of course, problem may be much more, but then as we have seen that there will be selection of the cases based on some criteria, and it will be implemented in the phase manner. So that aspect is there. So I believe the government will proceed accordingly. Another issue which came to my mind is that suggestions are being made by the various units. Say when the matter is sent by the NESE to the verification unit on the request of the assessment unit to make some verification, it will send its report on those aspects. Sometimes the review unit, when asked, will provide its suggestion to the assessment unit through the NESE and technical and so on. There is nothing that their suggestions or comments have been made binding upon the assessment unit. What all the assessment unit is to do is that when the entire material is collected by the NESE and it comes to him, then taking into account the entire material which is made available to it, the assessment unit will pass the order, and then such draft or revised draft, final draft, whatever it is, it will be sending it to the NESE. Of course, that these different stages perhaps have been introduced here, so that there may be a refinement and further refinement and further refinement in the scheme. But this aspect of the bindingness is not there. But at the same time, I feel that this absence is also not too much worry about, because assessing officer or the person sitting the assessment unit or NESE, whatever, they are the quasi-judicial authority. That character, I hope, still continues. And they have to take an ultimate decision. The units, it is a case like a court, judicial court, when they appoint a commission, they get an inquiry done, and they consider the report of the commission, and exercising the judicial discretion, the court takes its own view or decision. And similarly, the position by the assessing officer, who is a quasi-judicial authority, sometimes there may be issue of valuation, and valuation technical unit might have made some higher valuation, say applying the CPWD rate. He might not have taken care into account the reduction of the difference between the say CPWD rates and the state PWD rate, and therefore a suitable amount of reduction may be required. And sometime on technical aspect, the say some technical unit may be giving some details. The assessment unit through the NESE may agree or may not agree, and they may have their own say on the matter. So this we have to wait and watch, and we'll see how it works. Next is a question which arises of the constitutional validity, because we have seen that through the insertion of this two clauses, section 143(3)(a) and 3(b). In 3(a), they will come out with a scheme which they have done, and they have introduced this notification number 61, which we have discussed so far. Through 3(b), to make that scheme operative, they have been given a wide and, to my mind, unbridled power even to see whether any provision of the law, the words used are any provision of the law, whether to apply or not to apply, they may decide. And if they decide that some of the provisions are applicable, then they may apply it with certain exceptions, modification, and adaptation to the provisions. Of course, that is confined to the making of the assessment only. But then, question is conferring of such power upon the central government is at all desirable? Now, the scheme, which otherwise is the prerogative of the legislature, though scheme speaks of by subsection 3(c) that such notifications they will be tabled before both the House of the Parliament, but there appears no specific time frame prescribed in it, nor it is clear as to whether some discussion will be going. This is an issue, and Badal Sahab is there, and I'll request him to enlighten on that aspect of the matter, sir. Another situation is the direction, necessary direction which we used to get from the Joint Commissioner hitherto, and still continues so far the traditional assessment proceedings there. That when the assessee is apprehensive of something prejudicial or adverse to him being done or may be done by the assessing officer, then he can make a reference on that particular issue to the Joint Commission under section 144(a). And the direction issued by the Joint Commissioner are binding upon the assessee and assessing officer both. Now here, though of course Joint Commissioner and other higher officers are involved in the RESEs, it is not the lowest rung, the assessing officer, but higher superior officer are already involved therein. And it appears they will also be having their say, because everything arising from the assessment unit and reaching to the NESE will be routing through the RESE. So that is there, but I fear I still have got an issue because it may not fully meet with the principles of the natural justice, because there is a complete faceless hearing between the assessee on one hand and that senior officer like Joint Commissioner, which is otherwise presently available under section 144(a). So how the government will meet with this is to be seen. I've already discussed the conversion of the limited scrutiny cases, how it will be converted into full scrutiny cases, and whether the scheme at all contemplate such full scrutiny assessment or not. Another aspect which I am drawing attention is the applicability of section 136, because as per that provision under the income tax, the proceedings being carried out by the income tax authorities are deemed to be the judicial proceedings within the meaning of the Indian Penal Code. And so what will be the position of the entire e-assessment proceedings, whether they will be treated as judicial proceedings within the meaning of section 193 to 28 and 196 of the IPC. Sometimes there be the Act and various provisions require the assessing officer to record a satisfaction. Say, for example, under section 14(a), he has to record his satisfaction on particular aspects, section 68 to 69(c), all those. So how that will be done? We have to see whether it will be done by the NEC will direct the review, send it to the review committee, or some confusion is there in my mind on that aspect. Now, one important aspect is that the most negative aspect which I consider in this entire faceless e-assessment is that there is a lack of face-to-face interaction, because that is otherwise the very purpose. Of course, the scheme speak of some video conferencing, and clause 11 provides that when demanded, an opportunity of the video conferencing may be provided between the assessee on the one hand and the assessment unit, or between the verification unit. But see, kindly see that in the traditional assessment proceedings, and when there is a one-to-one contact, when there is a face-to-face hearing, what also matters is the facial expression coming on the face of the assessing officer while listening you, while hearing you, how he reacts. Body language of the assessing officer also sometimes is very important. It is not only a matter of assessing officer, but when we have seen that it is also likely it is to be extended to the appellate matters. Then how the judicial officer, say it is the Commissioner of Income Tax Appeal, or if extended to the Honorable ITT, then how the honorable members of the ITT are reacting. Because sometimes, see, while referring to the 4 T's, the third T was the strategical move. Because it is a code crafting also. While placing an argument, the person arguing will pause for a moment and will try to see what type of reaction on the face of the person hearing, that is the assessing officer or the appellate authority, is coming, or what his body language is suggesting. And then the person has to react accordingly. Those aspects are missing to some extent, though it appears that the video conferencing may fulfill this need, but there are various doubts. We are not aware whether the face of that particular person, the interrogating officer or the authority to whom we are indulged in the video conferencing, would be available or not. We are not interested in knowing the name and designation of the person, name of the person, or the place where he is situated. But at least we should be able to see the face of such person, so that our communication or our argument does not, or let it not remain to be a mere one-way delivery. It has got to be an effective communication. What I want to argue at that time must reach to the person effectively in the same manner, in the same sense which I argued or I read. There may be a problem. The receiving end may not properly understand. And in some professional course also, like chartered accountants, there is a subject in the management like effective communication. So that aspect must be kept into mind, and the board must come into with clarity. And since this is directly linked with the principle of natural justice, the principle of audio alterum petrum is there, and that is enshrined in our constitution and the jurisprudence. So that cannot be just killed. That is a serious issue which we have to resolve. So that is also for the consideration. I already discussed that it will be a time-consuming process. I already discussed that various round between various units, because it is being manhandled. Sometimes the assessee, of course, may take time, seek time. So that will be a problem. I will be taking you one decision of Honorable Madras High Court. Well, I'll come to the tips aspect that is very relevant in the present context. Before that, another issue I raised is the issuance of notice under 143(2). It simply says that the assessee has to reply within 15 days. Now, there is no further elaboration. But I believe that the assessee, when demanded, will be given sufficient time to meet with the reply. But the past experience, unfortunately, we have seen in some of the cases that the reply, the adjournment sought by the assessees or the AR during the course of the e-proceedings sometimes was not responded or rejected, and on the one hand, the assessee is kept on waiting, but he'll find one fine morning that this ex parte order is there, or his submission or request for adjournment remain to be considered. I already discussed that. Now, one thing which emerges is that the final word is always of the NAC. Everything will go to the NAC, and it is NAC. If NAC think that the draft assessment order, final draft assessment order, revised draft assessment, whatever is it, if the NAC is of the view that it is okay, then it will directly send a final order to the taxpayer with the demand and note and like this. But when NEC thinks that it is necessary to send it to the unit or to the assessee inviting his comment, there appears some lack of mechanism, and as I have already discussed earlier, also as to on what grounds, on basis the NEC will decide whether to consider such orders as final word and to be sent to the taxpayer, or again some explanation is to be called for from the taxpayer. The NEC would be doing this entire exercise based on this examination of all the orders based on the risk management strategy. In fact, I could not lay my hand if the definition of what is this RMS, how it will work. So to make the entire scheme transparent, and the authority should come out, the government should come out with the meaning and how it will work. Revision and another aspect is the revision and reassessment, because there is a built-in process of reviewing of the assessment, etc. We have already discussed. So that will certainly reduce and curtail the power of the concerned authorities under Section 263 of the Commissioner concerned, or the AO under Section 147, etc. This aspect of transfer of case by the NEC at any stage of the proceeding when it considered necessary, I have already discussed, raises serious questions to be looked into. Natural justice I have already discussed. Another aspect was that there is a provision in clause 6 that if any of the unit, I've already discussed and brought to your kind notice this aspect, that any of the unit may suggest notice for if there is a violation by the assessor of any notice direction order under 21. So it is to be seen under what provision they will be doing it, because it is not for each and every provision under chapter 21. They may refer it, but only on the related provisions, I believe they may refer or impose, if so required, the penalty. Yes, this is the decision of Honorable Madras High Court, and it is worth reading. I have extracted the relevant part here. I may read it. Para 15 says, it conveys a message which we have to understand now. The Government of India has introduced e-governance for conduct of assessment proceeding electronically. It is a laudable step taken by the department to pave way for an objective assessment without human interactions. At the same time, such proceeding can lead to erroneous assessment if officers are not able to understand the transaction and statement of account and assessee without a personal hearing. So kindly see, this is a note of caution by the Honorable High Court. The respondent should have to be therefore at least called for an explanation in writing before proceeding to conclude that the amount collected by the petitioner was unusual. It was in the fact of the case. So what the Honorable High Court has says that you must give an opportunity to the assessee to be heard, whether it is through the e-process challenge, some inviting submission. If the receiving end is not available, the NEC or assessment unit or all the 4 units, they are not able to understand. Kindly see, the words have got their own limitation. We cannot express ourselves through the words. If that be there, then the submission would be going like a thesis report, running into hundreds of pages. And there may be a fear of the receiving end, the person applying his mind, to get lost in those thesis type of replies and submission running into thousands of pages. So that is the juncture when a personal interaction through video conferencing, taking of course all the precautions, they are bound to allow it. Then the Honorable High Court further observed in para 17, since the assessment proceeding no longer involve human interaction and is based on records alone, the assessment proceeding should have commenced much earlier, so that before passing the assessment order, the respondent assessing officer could have come to a definite conclusion on the facts after fully understanding the nature of the business of the petitioner. It appears that the return of income was filed by the petitioner on such and such date. However, the assessment proceeding commenced much later toward the end of the period prescribed under 153, that is limitation. In my view, assessment proceedings under the change scenario would require proper determination of fact by proper exchange and flow of correspondence between the petitioner and the respondent assessing officer. And I believe these are most relevant observation given by the Honorable High Court, and to my mind, this is the sole decision which I could come of the Honorable High Court, which is useful so far as this e-assessment or faceless assessment aspect is concerned. And we have already, issue has been, I have also raised an issue that it is a time-consuming process. Assessment units and NESE may not meet with the requirement of the limitation. So say they have to wake up early. Now, traditionally, we have been seeing that Notice 148 is being issued at the fag end of 6 years. Now, that is not the subject matter of e-assessment, but the notice of hearing, what they used to is that they issue a notice under section 143 just to save the limitation under 143(2), and they slip over their right, and then they wake up when the assessment order is getting barred by limitation in the last 6 months or 7 months, 8 months, and then they expect the assessee to cooperate on a daily basis. So they don't appreciate that the lawmakers have this mechanism has been prescribed not only for the benefit of the revenue itself, but it is meant to be observed by both the sides. It keeps into mind, consider into mind the practical difficulties which may be felt by both the sides. So the Honorable High Court has also felt this necessity, and I hope in the e and faceless assessment, due care will be taken of these aspects. Para 18 is another from the High Court also. I may read this also. Since the Government of India has done away with the human interaction during the assessment proceeding, it is expected that the petitioner will clearly explain its. Now it is a duty on the part of the assessee that the assessee will clearly explain its stand in writing so that the respondent AO can come to an objective conclusion on facts based on the record alone. So friends, we have to gear up ourselves. It is not that we appear before the assessing officer, say some words, and we have a discussion, and then we bring it to writing, and because there the assessing officer is able to understand. If he has got some doubt, he will immediately raise a counter query, and you are able to explain it, to clarify it. But here it will be very difficult. You cannot digest into the mind of the concerned officer what is going in their mind. How will react to our explanation? So we have to take care, and our submission must be now we have to be drafted very carefully. So some of the tips I have included here, that we have to make the assessing officer understand through effective communication. Mere writing a letter will not suffice. We should prepare a reply pairwise, not leaving any of the queries. Because leaving a query may adversely affect your interest, and addition may be made. And the reply must be supported with suitable cogent evidences. We may also support the submission with the relevant case laws, the CBDT instructions, I'm sorry for the interruption. Sir, I have taken some time more, perhaps, I believe. If permitted, I may quickly come to the some of the relevant, some of the point left, if permitted.
Okay, 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now we must ensure a complete reply. Depending upon this, all of course depend upon the case to case. To include the past history, and if it is GP trading addition and so on. So that is legal objection. If though 148 is not there, but there may be some legal objection in different factual situation, we must not forget to take a legal objection at the relevant point of time. We must ask for the third party information being relied upon by the assessing officer or material relied upon them. If a statement is being recorded relied upon, we must ask specifically. We cannot say just jump and say that the copy of the statement were not supplied, or say that the opportunity of cross examination was not given to you. It is your duty. You must come forward and specifically ask, and there should be a very specific request being made in the letter. In fact, we must. What I am stressing is that everything must be made it very clear. You cannot expect the assessing officer to digest in your mind and to understand what we wanted or I wanted to convey him. And more particularly, this crucial strategical aspect must be mentioned very specifically. Andaman Timber is the authority I cited here. Then, apart from enclosing the evidence, we must give a reference in the submission itself, divide the submission in suitable paras. The evidences may be submitted in a paper book form, of course, electronically, but that is feasibly possible. When need arises, must make a submission request for issuing summon to the witness, say a cash creditor, to prove our bona fide on our own. We should not wait that let the your assessment unit ask for producing him. Not to admit or confess, especially in writing. And so these all matters are there that because I believe that because of this peculiarity of the system involved and lackings are of course there in the initial stage, I believe that there may be huge additions being to be made by the department for want of explanation or for want of proper understanding the explanation though rendered. And we have already seen in the past in e-assessment proceedings when in 1718 when huge additions have been made on the aspect of demonetization and cash deposit, heavy cash deposits. The reply must be filed always through the registered account only. Otherwise, there can't be any receipt, and the authorities, the receiving end will not be bound under the provisions of the Information Technology Act. You cannot contend that reply was sent. Section 81 of the Information Technology Act I have reproduced here because they have got this act has an overriding effect over the provisions of the Income Tax Act. And as I submitted earlier also that we must also go through the relevant provisions to make our representation or understanding of the scheme better. One important aspect is that now even the very filing, a starting point is the filing of the return, then return filing, now filing of the return correctly, fully, truly, containing all relevant details is now the need of the hour, and we must do it. Say for a case of a charitable trust, you don't fill in the details of the registration of the trust. Then they will make addition. The CPC has made additions, and he is denying you the exemption under Section 11. So don't permit the department to select your case and to raise human demands like this. CBDT circular is there in the form of FAQ to understand this. One DIN aspect I have also touched because we must ensure now that every communication received from the side of the department must bear document identification number made effective from 1st of October 2019, because in absence of this, the document notification, whatever sent by the department, has got no legal sanctity, and it is a rough piece of paper. So at suitable occasion, you may raise an argument before the appellate authority if need arise. But interestingly, 282B, which has dealt with or which dealt with such position, is no more there. This is I could notice. So that is required to be reintroduced. I believe this is the correct position. Expected benefit of the scheme, we all know that it will be, of course, an ease of compliance of the taxpayer sitting at the place of home or office. He will prepare the reply, send it to the. And very important is that you will be able to avoid a humiliation while sitting in the corridors of the department, waiting for your turn to come. You are made to suffer mentally, waiting for hours together. That is nothing. That is not short of a state of mental torture. And since humor intervention, there were occasion that sometime the officer, with all respect, became revengeful. So it is like this. So that will be the things of the past in the cases of faceless and e-assessments. And of course, in big cities, it will save a lot of time, money, energy, and Vijay sitting in Mumbai, others sitting in Delhi, Kolkata, etc. In Jaipur, though, time is still in Jaipur also, because it will take time and energy while making appearance before the authority, which will not be there. ये हो गया सारा कुछ practical issues are already there. So, friend, with this conclusion that it is a laudable effort attempt by the central government, we have to welcome it, but with certain cautious. And the suggestions which came to my mind, I made it, and then for the respected chairman, further to add, supplement, So yeah, thank you, Nia. So with this, I thank you once again